The program, a man is set to appear in court today in connection with the murder and possible rape of 18-year-old Gomolemo Legae of Ramosadi in Mahikeng in the northwest. Legae was stabbed several times. She was then doused with petrol and set alight. The incident comes just a week after 21-year-old student Precious Ramabulana was raped and stabbed 52 times. These incidents and others have taken place as South Africa observes the 16 Days of Activism for no violence against women and children. The question we're asking today is whether our police service is well equipped to detect and prevent such incidents. And to help us unpack this, we're joined in studio by Lieutenant Colonel Almerie Myburg, who's a criminologist in the investigative psychology section in the SABC. Colonel, good to have you in studio. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
You know, these are such gruesome incidents that I struggle to read these stories because I just imagine it's my child, my friend, or even me. And I think about those last moments of any victim, and let's just think of Gomolemo for now and what she must have gone through, being perhaps raped, stabbed 25 times, and then being doused with petrol and burnt beyond recognition. What goes through a criminal's mind to do these kind of things?
I think it's a lot to do with a lot of aggression and anger. And in general, the fact that I get the feeling in South Africa, we have more, people think more they can get away with crimes, and especially violent crimes. They may think that the justice process takes so long that they can get away with it. Whereas we see many of these cases appearing before court, but often we do not hear about that in the media. But now in these 16 days of activism, I think the media reports more on these cases. So we now know about these cases, but they are there
and they're happening more than we even know.
More than we know,
so, yes. I mean, you're confronted with this on a daily basis. So just because, you know, it is the 16 days of activism, the stories are getting out there, South Africa are hearing about them, but every other day of the year, we don't hear about them, and they are as bad. Is that what you're saying?
That's true, yes. So you will often see in the newspaper just a small little report on something that happened on page 5 or 6.
If you're lucky. And that's what gets to me, and I always say that. Like, you look at the small little section of the newspaper, and you know, if your death is gruesome enough, it might make the newspapers. Otherwise, no, it's just another death, and that is frightening.
That's true. We often deal at the section where I work. We get cases in, especially this gender-based violence kind of crimes, intimate partner murders. We get those in, and when you look at the case, you realize it's supposed to be a big case. But the media doesn't report on it, so nobody knows about this except for the close family of the victims.
Yeah, I've often said that about ourselves, is that if we as the media are not even reporting on it, and I say that on television news as well. I mean, you've got X amount of time for a news bulletin, and if you have to report on all these cases, you'd probably fill it up with just these gruesome incidences and stories coming out in the news. So you eventually say, well, you know, we can't cover them all, so we'll have to wait for a really extraordinary one. Let's go into the mind and the workings of the perpetrators, because at the end of the day, you're a criminologist. You kind of, maybe you know the workings of their minds, because it's hard for me to understand it, and I think a lot of South Africans as well. What are the circumstances? What can lead somebody to be so aggressive? And it's not just a murder. As we say, it's a rape, it's stabbing over 60 times, it's burning someone beyond recognition. Why so gruesome and violent?
I think there's a lot of anger, definitely a lot of anger, and it has to get out somehow. So this person, the perpetrator, sits with anger. In these type of cases, your intimate partner murder or a perceived relationship with a victim, you often find that this perpetrator may be confused, but then because of this building up of anger over a period of time, and then, as I said, if they think they can get away with it, but in that specific moment of the crime, they just lose any reason and then commit the crime. And then when they start, they just continue and continue to show what they felt towards the victim.
Yeah, and just like you say, this outlet to get rid of whatever it is that's getting to you. And in fact, it might not even be towards the individual, but just what you are feeling inside. I mean, we don't know the circumstances around this particular story of Gomolemo, but if you know that somebody has these behavioral techniques or behavioral ways about them, that they look violent, they seem to be disturbed in some way, how do you save yourself? I mean, how do you get away from this? What are those warning signs?
The warning signs will normally, will not always be there.
Yeah.
In many instances, there will be a lot of controlling of the victim. In a relationship, there will be controlling and very controlling behavior. And there might not be violence in the relationship before this happens. Or in a case like many of the cases that we hear about where it doesn't seem that there was a relationship between the victim and the perpetrator. But you will often see that in relationships, these people will be very controlling. They want to know exactly where the partner or the spouse is the whole time, and then be verbally violent and psychologically violent towards the partners.
Yeah. You work and have worked on several serial rapist cases, and this again is a major concern because, like you say, you may get warning signs from somebody you're close to, but it also may be a complete stranger that is watching you, and then you fall victim to them. In terms of the police service, are they equipped to deal with this? I mean, to find out who a perpetrator is before they commit these crimes. Intelligence services, working with the police, are we equipped for this?
Yes, I think in the last few years with our DNA specifically, our forensic services and the DNA, like I say specifically, we link so many serial rapists with DNA. What that means is that there must be DNA and then these cases must be reported. So that is very important that victims do not go to the police station immediately after they've been raped, so that they can go for a medical evaluation immediately, that the DNA can be collected and sent in, and then those cases are linked together.
Yeah.
The other thing that we do at the section is we link cases where there was no forensic evidence, link that with the ones that they were forensic evidence, and we do this based on the behavior on the crime scenes.
Yeah, and that's sort of the workings, the behind the scene workings. But if we look at the perpetrators themselves and talking to them, those that have been found guilty, those that are perhaps serving time in prison for the crimes that they've committed, their lives, I mean, are they common threads between them? That you can see that perhaps incidences that have happened to them that make them commit these heinous crimes.
Yes, there's normally in the past, whether when they were children or older young adults, we normally see that there is something that happened that was traumatic for them in terms of a relationship with a mother or a significant other, and then they decide then basically that they are going to fall on into crime, and it's basically like revenge for what was done to them.
Can you rehabilitate these perpetrators?
They must want to rehabilitate. They must want to be rehabilitated. There must be a wish to change, and before that they must have insight into what the damage was that they've done to the victims, to the family, their own families, to the families of the victims. So there must be remorse from their side before you can start with the rehabilitation process.
I'm going to throw the hardest question at the book at you because, and this is how we'll wrap up the interview. We've asked the question to South Africans, and if I can do a snapshot of what people want to happen to these perpetrators, they keep saying, bring back the death penalty. Does that work? I mean, bringing back a death penalty into a justice system, is it the answer?
I don't think so. if we look at the sentences for rape as it is, so there is, especially in a serial rape case, they will, the chances are there that they will get a life sentence, but that is not that even is not a deterrent for them.
All right, we leave it there. Thanks so much for talking to us. Not a nice conversation to have, but Lieutenant Colonel Almerie Myburg, she's a criminologist and works in investigative psychology section with the SAPS. Thanks very much for coming in to talk to us this morning.
It was my pleasure.
All right, from a very difficult story to something a lot nicer to leave you with.